left, right.
Yo, thanks for tuning in. I think you're going to like this episode. Throughout the Sip Talk podcast, homelessness has been a topic that's kind of come up many times. We're bringing in Derrick Kirk, who was once homeless before, but he's also got an incredible story. So I want you to enjoy this podcast, like, comment, share. That would be much appreciated. And check Derrick out. I'll include his links below. This is Sip Talk. Grab a drink and enjoy.
Where's this going?
Cheers.
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 So we got a quick start here. Welcome to episode 39 of Sip Talk, How Not to Be Homeless. I think that's a good segue into having a drink.
Step one, find a home.
I'd like to introduce, we got James here, James, the Bosnian Boswell, philosopher, professional soccer referee, professional bartender, full-time accountant. Does that sum it up?
And part-time disappointment.
What are you drinking over there, James?
Going with the good old Milwaukee's Best Ice in the Jim Beam. Koozie.
Oh, man, I got to get a koozie. You know, the South, everywhere you go, the bars hand out koozies. Here, I don't think, Mark, you ever gotten a koozie at a bar in New York?
What's
a koozie? A koozie is like a felt thing that covers this.
It's like a little foam thing to keep your drink cool and like so that way your hand doesn't heat it up.
Oh, all right.
Dude, I have so many of those. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was cleaning out the apartment. We tossed probably 20 of them.
We don't have them here. I toss the ones that I get that like I don't like the brands. Like I got a Triumph motorcycle. I have a Harley Davidson koozie. I toss the Harley koozie because I don't know. I just felt like I was cheating at myself. For those of you guys that are watching live on Instagram, they changed up the app. There's an update. I can't see what you're saying really. Sorry about that. If you guys are watching live on TikTok, that's awesome. I can see what you guys are saying, but the interaction is really, really tough. So tune in. Make sure you load up the comments. We're talking about how not to be homeless. James' leading question for me was, what was the closest I've ever been to homeless?
Yeah, either being homeless or even just like having like a short period of time where you got to experience it.
Yeah. Well, here's my thing about homelessness is that you ask somebody why they're homeless and they're going to tell you because they lost their job, or they're going to tell you because they got evicted or they didn't pay rent. But my question for you, and just answer this straight up, don't read too much into it, James. If you got evicted, what would be your first move? If like you just showed up at your house after work and there's a chain across the door, which by the way, I don't know if South Carolina laws, in New York City, that's like way, way illegal. You would own.
I'm pretty sure you can't do that here either.
I'm pretty sure you can't do it anywhere, at least in the U.S. But say, just let me run this by because I think this is as extreme as it might get. You show up at home one day and the front door is chained up. What's your next move?
Well, I'm going to be making a whole bunch of phone calls because I want to be able to get my stuff and figure out why I'm locked out. But
wait, so you're gonna make phone calls to recover your things and find out why first?
Well, yeah, I want to figure out why I can't get into my apartment because I'm still paying for it.
Okay. Well, let's say you haven't paid.
Well, then the place being locked up is probably not going to come as much of a surprise. But assuming that I'm not able to stay at my place, the short-term solution is I'm going to reach out to people that I know and see if I can crash at their place for a couple of days while I sort things out. Eventually, I'm going to wear out the welcome with them, as is natural. And so while I'm staying with my friends or whatever, I'm probably going to be trying to figure out what's going on with the apartment and also scouting out new housing opportunities, whether it's getting a new lease somewhere or like finding a place to store my things if I can get access to them. And then if I have to, I'll probably get a hotel room for a little bit while I figure out my housing situation. Thankfully, I've got the money that I could afford that.
Well, and I'll just one up you in the scenario. You don't have the money, but then you're going to focus on a work situation. But you're taking it's any move that you're making here. It sounds like you're taking proactive steps to find new housing.
Yeah, that's going to be my number one priority on top of anything else. And if I had to miss a day of work or whatever and burn vacation time to be able to resolve my housing situation, that's what I would do. And if I needed to tell my boss, be like, look, my apartment complex locked me out because the management did whatever, and they'd probably say, get caught up on whatever deadline stuff you have. And like, if you need to let your clients know that you're going to be late on something, or like ask somebody else for help, that I know that my office would be supportive of me while I tried to sort out whatever the hell was going on in my personal life.
Yeah. Up until a certain extent, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, within reason, but I know that my office would try and help me if they could.
Mine is a long story, but I found out my ex hadn't paid the mortgage in 9 months. So yeah, I think things like that will catch you up. But I think really the difference between you and someone who remains homeless or spends extended time homeless is that they're not taking the proactive steps. And there's something that they have prioritized over housing or over finding another job. And my guess is that it is most oftentimes drugs or
mental illness
or mental issues. Primarily probably mental illness. But that's what I'm thinking. I'm hoping we get Derrick on here who can maybe shed some light as to what the streets are a bit more like. But I don't know his situation. I don't know his story. Maybe he wasn't on the streets. He may have been in shelters, something like that. I deal with people that are in shelters on a reasonably regular basis who come in here looking for housing. We in Manhattan, the prices that we post listings for and that we have listings for typically over the threshold of what someone's affording coming right out of the shelter. But every once in a while there's a really affordable option and we get some calls and people come in. I know from my perspective what it's like walking around the streets, and we've had conversations about this, what it's like walking around in the streets lately throughout coronavirus. And the homeless people that are in New York City, and I don't know necessarily that they're homeless, because I've heard stories of people who have a home, who live outside of the city, who commute into Panhandle.
Yeah, that certainly happens, because if you're good at panhandling, you can make a pretty decent living on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some people that will drive in, put on whatever costume, whether it's an actual costume or just make themselves look super homeless for the day, and then go beg for whatever money they can get and then get back in their car and drive home and repeat.
My thinking on that always has just been, though, that that's pretty much a full-time job.
Oh, yeah, it is.
You're commuting in, you're putting on dirty clothes, and...
Or you're putting on a costume and doing like some of the performance art where you're dressed up as a character or whatever else.
Well, that's a great way to make some money and get a job. Put some aloe on that sunburn. Who's sunburned?
Me. It's more like it's peeling now. It is what it is.
But I could see based off of this, your whatever filter is on this is making you literally look but it looks like you're radiating red.
I'm sure I am, but it is what it is.
All right, keep your clothes on. Let me.
I got showing the difference.
Mark wanted to. Mark you have a question for me, or something you wanted to add about?
I'm not homeless. I was just gonna add something. I've lived like in Europe and Russia.
Speak up a little bit, just so the live can catch you as well.
Yeah, Can I also shoot myself a little?
Sure, shoot yourself. You're going to school for journalism?
Yeah, I'm studying journalism.
So, all right, go ahead.
Okay, so...
speak up so we can hear you.
I was just going to say that I lived in Russia and in Europe for like a while. And what I saw with the homeless people there, they kind, they like alcoholics, but they ask you for money and you kind of want to help them because they're not being they don't follow you. Like they look okay compared to the homeless people that you see here.
Yeah.
In Europe, they look like, you know, strangers with beard, like Gandalf, you know, this type of stuff. Here they like, can I have $1? Can I have $1? You say to them, I don't have like cash, and they can ask you, can we go to ATM? Right?
Yeah. But I definitely think there's a different breed of homeless person here in New York. But I don't know. I do remember my first day being in Paris. I went for a jog, and I watched a woman just middle of the street lay some paper down, pull her pants off, take a crap, fold up the paper, throw it in the garbage, pull her pants back up, and just move on with life. And it's just weird to, like, I guess you gotta go, and a lot of public places aren't going to give you access for public restroom.
But also in Europe, a lot of the public restrooms actually charge some small amount, like 25 or 50 cents or whatever.
Yeah. But I don't know that I can speak necessarily towards the difference in homeless, but I do feel, especially in Manhattan, that a lot of the homeless population here is, yes, it's all about drugs. And I think, maybe throughout the rest of the world, drugs are harder to find, maybe?
No, not at all.
Well, you think the types of drugs, maybe it depends also on where you are.
My time in Spain, it wasn't hard for me to find drugs if I wanted them.
But just think about, but you were paying for them probably, or you were with someone who was paying for them. We're not talking about drugs that a normal person from our perspective would do.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. Somebody who's making a lot of, like, cocaine is a very popular drug. What are other popular drugs?
The three easiest to find in Spain would have been cocaine, marijuana, and some version of ecstasy.
Yeah, that's really recreational. I'm not talking about crack or heroin.
Crack doesn't really exist outside the United States.
Like other, things.
Yeah, heroin, fentanyl. I saw this guy outside of the Lincoln Tunnel, and I've watched over the last year his leg deteriorate. It really started at the ankle, and it's worked its way up to his like up to the kneecap. It was all bandaged up, and I parked the bike and I walk by this guy all the time. And then if I have to go through the Lincoln Tunnel, I see him sitting there at the Lincoln Tunnel. So I was in a greater portion of last year, and recently I saw it on all the way up his thigh, on top of like his quads, the top of his leg, and it was split open. So it's swelling. But I imagine, it's disgusting.
It's got to be painful.
I imagine the guy doesn't feel a thing the majority of the day. And the rest of the day he's going after whatever drugs that he's going after to mask the pain. But the thing about the U.S. homeless population versus a lot of the rest of the world is that we have programs in place to help the homeless and give them a helping hand to make the next step up, should they choose to pursue that route.
Yeah, and so my roommate worked at a homeless shelter in Charleston for a while, and one of the policies that the shelter had was if you were there, no drinking, no drugs, and there was a pretty strict curfew of, I don't remember if it was 8 or 10 o'clock at night, but it was one of those ones where if you were staying there, you had to be back by a certain period at that night. And if you didn't make the curfew, then like they would kick you out the next day. And so they would have a lot of people that would come in and they'd say, yeah, we have room available, but like, here are the rules. And some of them would say, I can't do that.
Because of drugs?
Yeah, they would say, I can't not drink or not do drugs. Thanks for the offer, but I'm going to stay on the street. I'm not saying that's the majority of them, but there were a number of people that wanted shelter or whatever, but couldn't abide by the rules of the shelter.
Mark, what's up?
Can I add something? I feel like it goes more towards like a health related reform or like a health problem. You guys have opioids crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Like opioid addiction. I feel like once you're in, that's it. Like you can't. It's completely different thing. In many countries, it's illegal. Like opioids are just illegal. Here, if you don't find opioids, you can get like heroin on the streets like easily.
Well, heroin's not legal.
I know, but that's how people get to heroin because a lot of doctors, they prescribe
Well,
opioids.
what I imagine has happened to a lot of, because our office is right near a methadone clinic, and methadone is treatment for heroin use. And what I imagine happened is someone has an injury, and they go to the hospital, and they're prescribed whatever type of opioid, or maybe non-opioid, whatever is masking the pain. And they can no longer afford that medication, and then they run into somebody who is,
Or their prescription just runs out.
or they're over self dosing, and they run out, and now they are in an insane amount of pain. And I don't think I've been in that type of pain before, but I can only imagine if I was in this mind-numbing type of pain, what I would do to mask the pain.
No, it's a really common pattern where people have an injury, they'll get prescribed some drugs, they'll run through the prescription, whatever, and then the doctor won't give them any more, and so they still have the pain, and so they'll usually try and find the pills on the street, and the pills are a lot more expensive than heroin. So at some point they say, you know what, heroin is cheaper and more effective, and so they end up starting to buy heroin instead of the pills, and now they're addicted to heroin. I know there was a bartender in Charleston, very talented bartender, that fell into that trap, and I don't know how he's doing now, but there are some times where at one point he got arrested for trying to rob a place because he needed his next fix. And
so I could imagine myself being in a homeless position. That would tell you a few years ago, like maybe 2013, 14, I considered buying a boat to live on the boat.
I don't remember this now.
No, it's just what is it?
Houseboat?
Miami Vice. Who's the guy that lives in the boat? If you guys are watching, who's the guy that lives in the boat with the fucking alligator? I'm pretty sure it's like Don Johnson or something, Miami Vice.
I have no idea.
But I just figured a boat payment and a dock slip would be cheaper than an apartment, and it would be cooler and more mobile. It was just a thought. But my thinking is, if I ended up being homeless, a gym membership would be my best friend. And I'm pretty sure for $10 a month, this Planet Fitness next door to my office has a lot of homeless people that run in there and shower and use the facilities, I imagine.
Yeah, that's actually one of the most common strategies for homeless people, is like the first thing that if you're looking for a way out is buy yourself a gym membership. It gives you a place to clean up.
Yeah, I mean, and if you
for relatively cheap.
You can rent a locker there too. Then you've got some decent place to store your clothes.
Yeah,
but what my thing is, the biggest thing that drives me nuts about the homeless population is the drug use. I told you the story the other day. I think we were on air about the agent here who the homeless guy basically like attacked her, but first started asking her to buy him food. Did I share that?
I think so. Mm-mm.
So, well, anybody who's watching right now, Mark, I don't know if you heard this story, but the guy was asking her for money, and hey, can I get something to eat? Can you give me some money? I'm hungry. And she said, I'll buy you food. So he goes, okay. They walked into McDonald's, which is the end of the block here, and he ordered like fucking $30 worth of food.
And this wasn't part of the deal, buddy.
And then the guy at McDonald's was like, why don't you just get the value menu? It's the value menu item, it's a better deal. And then the guy got upset with the McDonald's worker saying, what do who are you to tell me what to order? And then she's like, I'm out. Like, I'm sorry. Now that the homeless guy and the McDonald's guy are arguing, and she's just like, I'm out. And then the guy just like chased after her using just really nasty language, being very verbally abusive. And she was trying to be nice. She was trying to do something nice, but
he abused the charity.
But what he was going to do was he was going to get $15, $20, $30 worth of McDonald's food. He wasn't going to eat it.
He's going to trade it for drugs.
He was going to go outside and trade it for drugs, or trade it. He could sell the burgers for $1. He could sell the burgers for 50 cents. enough to make that $5 or $10 that he needs to get, I mean, I don't know anything about street drugs, but I imagine they're not that expensive. I imagine you can get some pretty bad stuff.
I'm sure it's like $5 for a dose.
But what a dose of what, and how long is that high going to be?
I don't know.
It depends on the drug and what dose you're getting. I have no idea. Like, none of us are really good ambassadors for this, but
If you want me to bring somebody else on who's currently homeless, I'll send somebody right outside.
So what's the closest you've ever been, or like the closest experience you've had to being homeless?
That was my opening point when I asked you, if you showed up to your door and it was locked, you would call a friend, you would call family. Now, maybe you're, excommunicated from your family or whatever. You're going to make alternate arrangements. It's not, homeless should be a temporary thing. So what's the closest I've ever been to homeless? I've never missed a rent payment, but I guess it also really goes to where you place your standards. Like what level have you created your baseline standard at? And mine isn't just above the ability to pay rent. Paying rent isn't where I have my standards set. It's probably a decent amount higher than just that standard. But this is going to sound really bougie, but I did sell my Porsche to pay rent.
We all have to make sacrifices.
Yeah, we all have to make sacrifices. But it's a true statement. At the time when I bought the car, money was rolling. We were making lots of money. I really, I could have bought it in cash if I wanted. However, because of coronavirus, rather than hold on to the car as long as I could, that was one of the first things to go. Especially in New York City, having a car is a luxury, and then having a luxury car is an uber luxury. So I sold the car to pay rent, but I could still get to and from work. I still have the motorcycle. I have 2 bicycles. I have subway and public transportation, yellow cabs, Uber. I'm not shooting myself in the foot by selling the car. But my point is setting, your priorities at whatever level.
Yeah, but again, it's like for people that aren't mentally ill and aren't addicted to drugs, it's much more likely that homelessness, if it happens, is going to be a temporary thing.
Yes, and that's. I remember going to a ski resort in the summertime. You went to Smuggler's Notch in Vermont?
Yeah, but only once, and it was during the winter.
Well, we used to go for like a summer program. We used to do hiking and stuff. And there was one like overnight hike where you bring maybe they provided, I don't remember. But you go and you hike and you stay in this place all the way to the top of the mountain. And I just remember sleeping in like cots, I must have been 7 or 8 years old at the time. But you're basically sleeping in a big open room. And that in my mind, when I imagine homelessness, I go to that childhood image of what it was like being in basically a giant resort that's empty because it's summertime. And there's cots or whatever else lined up on the floor.
And that's an improvement over a lot of homeless people's lives.
Yeah, but that's what I figure is akin to a homeless shelter.
Closest I ever got, I only really got to do it. Only did it once. Where when I was living in Spain early on in my program, there was a town about an hour and a half east of where I was living, and they were having this big festival or whatever. So a whole bunch of the people in my program wanted to go to check it out. So I said, sure, because the bus trip was only like $20 round trip. So I go there, and it's an all-night thing, and a lot of them got hotels or hostels or whatever, and I was super poor, so I was like, you know what, I don't need a hotel or whatever. So now it gets to like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I've been drinking since 9 o'clock at night, and I'm just super tired, and I don't have a hotel to go to. and the first bus doesn't even leave the city, so I can like get back to my room in Bilbao until like 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. And so like it was January, it was cold, and I didn't really have anything on me. I had just kind of normal clothes, like long pants and maybe like a button down shirt or something. And it was probably like 40 degrees outside. I tried sleeping in like a garage opening where it was slightly sheltered. And I eventually ended up sleeping. I walked into a hotel and then just like walked up the stairs and slept on the landing of a staircase at like the highest floor, figuring that would be where like there would be the least amount of foot traffic.
That's also coincidentally a good place to have sex. Just saying.
The landing of a staircase in a hotel.
Yeah. Especially if you can't afford a room.
Yeah. Well, but yeah, that even just doing that for one night of not having a place where I could go inside and just have the most basic amenities, like I can't do that again. Anytime I travel, I make sure to have arrangements. I don't ever want to have to do the whole homeless thing.
Ladin, who's watching, who's saying we should interview a homeless person. We're trying to get right now.
Should be on any minute.
Derrick on the line, who was formerly homeless, grew up through that system, and we're hoping to get his perspective.
Yeah, he's gonna have way more to say about this than either of us.
Well, yeah, exactly. We may have had some tough times, but homelessness is, I mean, when you're like, oh yeah, I've hit rock bottom, would you consider it? And it's my understanding that he was homeless as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you're a kid, there's a lot of stuff that's out of your control.
You also don't understand what's going on as well.
Sure. I just remember being a kid, like as young as 8, 9 years old, probably even younger, just being like, fuck, I hate not being in any control and just wanting to be an adult so I can just call the shots and not have some arbitrary, no, you can't do that with no explanation holding you from doing something.
Yeah.
And I remember that from a really early age, just being like, fuck this. And once I remember the freedom of having a bicycle where like it was okay that we could, you and I could, how far away would you say we lived from each other? 5 miles?
As the crow flies, yeah.
Okay. So, but as the cycle pedals, maybe
probably 6 or 7 miles on the roads.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And I just remember the absolute freedom it felt like having the bicycle. And then once I had the car, just feeling like a real person where there was no constraint on life in
Yeah, it was really liberating. Just like, I want to go somewhere. I don't have to ask anybody. I can just go.
Yeah, you're not relying on anybody else. Obviously, money is an issue, but that's that's about it. Gas money is an issue. Although at the time, I very quickly graduated from jobless person with their parents' old car to pizza delivery guy with their parents' old car. So I don't know if this guy's having technical difficulties or not, but
Has he reached out to you?
yeah, and should be coming on, but irregardless, I want to get into what you would do if you found yourself homeless.
I already kind of told you. It's reach out to the people that I know can support me on a short-term basis. Use the time that they give me to be able to find a solution.
And now let's say that time has passed, though. Now what?
Well, I'm either gonna if I have the money, I'm going to probably just get like one of those like weekly rates at a hotel.
You
don't. Do I still have my car?
Sure, but you don't have any gas money, or maybe tickets. If you're in New York and you get a ticket, or imagine you're in New York and your car's been towed, and now it's $180 or whatever, the $95, whatever the holding fee is, and you're wearing dirty clothes. So like now interviewing for a job day by day, hour of sweating in the sun by hour of sweating in the sun, finding a job is becoming more and more.
If I have $0 to my name and I don't have a car, all I really have is the clothes on my back, then the first place I'm going to be going is I'm going to be looking for any homeless shelter that's out there that has some kind of support services, where, because I'm not going to have to worry about drugs or alcohol or mental illness or whatever. So I'll be able to get in and I'll have a place to sleep at night and a place to shower. And I can use the time that the homeless shelter gives me to try and find a job. And they'll have the kind of the support services in terms of like getting an address. Because a lot of times if you don't have an address, you can't get hired.
True.
So I would say, how do I solve this problem? And they might say, like, here's a PO box that you can use or anything like that. So I would find whatever resources are out there. If I can't rely on friends and family, I don't have a car that I can sleep in, I don't have anywhere that I can go, then yeah, the first place I'm going to go is a homeless shelter and try and get the resources that they have available.
Yeah, I imagine that as a homeless person, and again, I'm going by the people that I see on the streets of New York, but I imagine that one of the biggest obstacles you have is being smelly and wearing dirty clothes, because I don't think at that point you're getting a job.
There's also some businesses out there that like will offer to do like a free cleaning of your clothes or whatever for a job interview if you're homeless or anything like that. I've seen that all over the place.
Let's see.
So like find whatever resources there are out there.
All right, so let's see if we can bring this guy on. We got Derrick here. Oh boy.
Hey, there we go. We got him.
Derrick, how are you? I think you're muted right now.
A minute. There we go.
Yeah.
We got you live on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. Glad you could join us. You know more about yourself. We just recently started connecting, so I'll let you do a quick self-intro.
Okay. I'm Derrick Kirk, the entrepreneur. I've been heavily into real estate. I also have a book that's releasing in 2021 called Innocence Lost, the Derrick Kirk story, as well. That's releasing on ebook on all the major platforms, and I also have a podcast on all the major platforms as well called My Thoughts with Derrick Kirk.
Well, we're glad to have you. And one of the things we've been talking about while we were waiting for you to be able to come on is just our thoughts on how does homelessness happen and how do you get out of it? And both of us are not really well versed in this. We read a little bit about your bio and your upbringing, and we think that like one of the biggest questions we have is how were you able to break out of it and find success for yourself?
Just first though, kudos on owning what it is you got going on. Derrick, you are your own brand, man. And I TikTok is a platform that's newer for me, but I have a lot of people that interact with me on a literally daily basis. And I go and they follow me, and I go to their page, I go to follow them back, and there's nothing there. And people will message me and they'll say, "How come you're not following me?" And I'm like, "Well, there's nothing to follow. You just want me to be connected for the sake." So I made a post this morning, and I said, "Look, if you want to start creating some content, rather than coming up with a silly skit or a dance, just tell your story, and and tell the truth to your story." And I believe that you have really doubled down on that, and I think you got a very cool story. And I'm sure you have used that as a springboard into the rest of your life. Things look like they're going really well right now. You got the podcast, you got this book in the works. I'm looking forward to hearing a little more on that. I listened to a few episodes of your podcast. I like them. They're shorter than ours, which makes them much more digestible. We can get a bit carried away. But it is Sip Talk, so the goal is to digress a bit the more we drink. But let me just ask you, because we definitely want to get into the homeless thing, because it's something we've talked about a lot lately. In New York City, the homeless population is fucking wild. And while people were not working and there weren't masses of people on public transportation on the streets, the homeless really took over. So that it's been recurring topic that we talked about a lot, which is why when you reached out to me and shared your story, that was one thing that we really kind of zeroed in on. But I'd like to hear, from you a little bit about your story. And if you want to elaborate on the homeless portion of it, we'd be glad to hear it. And if you don't mind us asking a few questions along the way.
Yeah, no problem at all. So pretty much how it all started was my mother was addicted to drugs. My father was absent, and so we grew up from birth all the way through by the age of 6, heavily around drug use, the selling, the distribution of drugs as well in my neighborhood. I grew up on the east side of Detroit, which is pretty much an invisible neighborhood. It's an area that most people won't travel to. It's not a very safe area, and to grow up in those parts, or life expectancy isn't very long for people that grow up in those neighborhoods. You don't really expect to grow up as an adult living in those neighborhoods. So in elementary school, I had to walk about 2 miles one way to school and 2 miles back, and I'm only like 5, 6 years old. But that was pretty normal. You saw other kids doing it in that, that 2 to 3 mile radius of neighborhood that I knew. Some of the stuff you grew up thinking back on was pretty wild, but yet so normal. For me, I was comfortable in that danger because I see it every day.
Well, can I just ask, you mentioned drug abuse. Can I ask what type of drugs?
It was crack cocaine. That was pretty much the only drug I've ever seen and knew of at a very young age, 5, 6 years old. You've seen it, you've smelled it, you're very familiar with being around it. You saw it being sold, you saw it being used so vividly at a very young age. So that was the drug, and you've seen the effects of it.
So what's going through your head though when you're seeing people use this drug? I remember being a kid and I smelled this funny smoke. I didn't even realize it until a decade later, but it was
yeah.
Weed is not crack.
It's the same thoughts. The same thought that you smell that weed. It's the same thoughts you smell anything that's harsher. You don't think anything of it. You know what it is. You see the effects of it, but you don't have any negative feelings towards it because you don't know any better. You're 6 years old. You don't know this is normal to see people do. You think this is just what all adults do.
It never hit you that like maybe this is why we're here?
Not at all.
You never drew that correlation?
No, because I only knew a 3 mile radius of a neighborhood. And that was my school and back home, my school and back home. So that's the world I knew and the only world I understood. Outside of that, it was PBS TV, you're watching Sesame Street and stuff like that. I really had no idea of the world outside that stretch.
So what happened as you grew up, as you got older and you started to kind of learn more about the world? Like, how did your opinions on this change?
With me, I was removed from that situation. So eventually social service came in, removed us from the home. They came to our schools, and I have an older sister and a younger sister and an older brother. They pretty much removed all of us from school, from the home, and put us in foster homes.
How old were you when that happened?
I was still 6 years old. I was 6 turning 7, so I was still 6 when they took us away. I lasted about a few months in a foster home because I had an anger issue that had developed after being out of that danger. We didn't really have structure. The abuse was very heavy in the home. So once I was taken out of that home, you would think things would get better. But no, actually, I was put into a foster care home, when they try to discipline you, it's actually a reversed effect. Even though you were getting abused at home, when someone else that you don't know tries to abuse you, it's really a difficult task. You're pretty tough kid to discipline from someone other than your parents. It's a stranger now trying to discipline you. So you pretty much feel like you need to stand up for yourself. It feels like more of a fight than discipline. And so I started to fight back to my foster parents, which wasn't, they weren't staying for it. So they pretty much called my social worker and say, hey, we got to get rid of this kid. He's pretty he has an anger issue that we didn't know he had. And so from there, they moved me to an orphanage. And so now 7 years old, I moved into an orphanage. And I was at that orphanage for about 10 years of my life inside that orphanage, living there. And which sounds dreading, because we all have a really blurred idea of what an orphanage is. But without the foster home, without the orphanage, I wouldn't have been able to be where I am now. I wouldn't have had this clear view of the world. I wouldn't have had this complete understanding of diversity. I wouldn't have been able to go places. It really broadened up my view. It really gave me a childhood as well. This orphanage was massive. It was the size of a college campus. So it had different dorms there, all filled with other kids like me, and from all across the Michigan area, some from Indiana, some from Ohio. They all come to this facility as orphans. And so we end up building a bond together and becoming brothers and learning more about other nationalities and the way other people's lives, and we see their families and people get adopted. And so you really end up getting a childhood and learning a lot. We had schools that were on campus as well, elementary, middle, and high schools that were on the facility. They even let us go off grounds to school. So now you get to go to the public high schools and the public middle schools. So now you get a much broader look. And these were all quality schools that the orphanage had money to send you to. And so, but when people hear orphanage, it's such a really fuzzy look, but there's a downside, because now I have to watch all these close people I begin to love go off and get adopted year over year over year over year, but yet not me. So that's that side too. And then eventually you age out of the orphanage, and now you have to go out into the world and find a way for yourself. But they really give you the tools to where if that does happen, you can kind of hit the ground running.
So you turned 17. So you left the orphanage. What happened? What was your arrangements when you left?
Pretty much you're pretty much getting ready for college at that. So once you're age out of there, they give you kind of an in-between home to go to, is usually a foster home. At that age, I'm pretty much self-sustaining. I don't really need any help with anything. I take care of myself. You get a job, and you pretty much, the state usually gives you money every single month to kind of take care of yourself in additional to the job that you have. So financially, you have more than enough money than you need to actually take care of yourself while transitioning to go to college.
So I got a couple of things. I got Mark here. He's one of the agents with the company. But real quick, just how do you want people to follow you? What do you want? Instagram?
Yeah, Instagram's the best. D Kirk for us. That's D Kirk FOR us.
Okay, and that's Kirk KIRK.
Yep.
FOR
US. Yep.
All right, cool. So Mark, you had a question real quick. Do you want to throw that in there right now?
Yeah. Okay. So
I'm gonna spin it just so you guys can see Mark, who's chilling in the office with me here.
Oh, there you go, Mark.
So since we're in real estate right now, and Justin is a big person here, so my question is this: Can you link like homelessness, crime increase, and people moving out from New York City because of the pandemic to the current real estate market? Like
So what are you saying? Are you thinking because of the pandemic right now?
Well, just given the current situation, like this, the pandemic that got us shut down, and then the crime increased, people started moving out from the city, and it's a lot more homeless people right now also.
Okay, so let me just correlate that a little bit, because I want to, Derrick, I want to learn a little bit more about your background, and then I want to, Mark and I obviously see the homelessness and the crime in New York City all the time, so I want to get into that a little bit. But the one thing I wanted to ask beforehand was, you seem to have had a pretty good trajectory, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Now, do you feel that you were an outlier?
Kinda. There's Derrick Kirks everywhere. I'm pretty much a blueprint of many others like me. Some just don't go as far. Some may cap at college, or they only make it out of high school. But yeah, I definitely, it's not easy. It's definitely not easy.
So, did you spend any time really on the streets?
Yes, at 18, I was homeless. At 18, so I spent pretty much majority of my 18th year on the streets.
What's it like? Because I wanna loop this back into kind of what Mark's getting at, talking about the crime. And my thinking is that really what's happened now is that because the police are afraid, I feel like, to do too much policing.
Mhm.
You know, one, because there's so much attention on them.
Yeah, it's a different climate for them at all. It makes their job a lot.
Derek, are you in New York City?
Politically.
No, I'm in Detroit, Michigan.
So yeah, and that's I don't know that Derek will be able to speak on that in New York City. That's where I'm going.
Mhm.
But I think what's happened now is that the homelessness in New York City and the drug use has gone unchecked so far. So I don't know if you caught any of this in the past podcast, but I went to park the other day on a motorcycle, and there was a guy laying in a parking spot on the street, not on the sidewalk, on the actual street between cars. I did a U-turn. I got pulled over for going the wrong way in a one-way. You know, and I run out of space to kind of go there. And the police really hassled the hell out of me. And obviously there's this homeless guy,
Way.
juxtapose the fact that he wasn't touched, and I got harassed pretty bad. But I think the crime that we have now is because nobody's cracking down on it. But I'm curious what it's like being on the streets, because before you jumped on, James and I were talking about, it's a difficult. We didn't start the same way that you started.
Mm-hmm.
We're middle class, upper middle class upbringing. We have, my family by no means has a lot of money, but there's always a couch I can crash on. Nobody in my family or extended family, even if I was there for months and months and months, maybe even years, they'd still be happy to have me in a basement or on a sofa or whatever. You don't have that padding behind you.
No.
So definitely a different trajectory. It's difficult for James or I to put ourselves in the shoes of a homeless person. I just keep kind of upping the ante. What would you do if you got evicted? And you go, I live in my car. Well, what if you didn't have a car? Well, then I'd get a hotel. Well, what if you didn't have the money to get? So it's really difficult for us to.
And at some point I ran out of answers. There's I don't know, man. And so that's one of the main questions I want to ask you is obviously you were able to make it out of there and find success where a lot of people don't. And I want to know, how did you do it, and what made you able to get out when so many other people couldn't?
You definitely got to want it. It starts there. You got to want, let me rephrase it. You got to want more, because you can want to get out and just stay where you are and consider that out. But being homeless, there are systems in place. And so you definitely have to find those systems that are in place to kind of help you get out, whether it's foster care, whether it's adult foster care, whether it's shelters, whether it's some type of human services programs. They exist, and they're sometimes they go underfunded, sometimes they're heavily funded. That all depends on whoever your state governor is. But these services are there to help people who fall down. And when they're underfunded, then your streets may be full with a lot of homeless people that don't have anywhere to go. And a small portion of those homeless people want to not be homeless again. But only the funding may only allow only a handful of them to get out of that situation. And a lot of them, they get the door closed on them. So the realities of it, when you open up the details, are ugly. But all us citizens, all we see when we're out and about is the homelessness. That's what's in our faces. We don't see why is this person there? Because I was once that person there, and so we don't see. We just think, okay, a lot of them are just just some of them are just lost causes, sadly. Some of them are going to be there no matter what, but it's a large portion of them that are trapped and that the resources are not there to get them off of the corner. So they try to pull themselves up by panhandling and or sleeping outside of a shelter or soup kitchens, or they try to do the little they can to make their situation comfortable until the resources are there to pull themselves out. Me, I was at the time I was homeless, I was just lucky enough to be young enough, because that helped a lot. I was young, and so I had priority services over someone that may have been 25, 30, 40. So since I was still considered a kid, the services got kicked to me over someone else that may have been like 35, 40, because they still considered me a kid. So now I was able to get out of that situation a lot faster than them. And then I just pretty much trampoline myself onto college and onto business. And so definitely the city services where your tax dollars go to help these homeless people.
I'm gonna make a wild guess that when you were homeless, you didn't have a drug problem though.
No. So I've never done drugs at all. I've never smoked weed. I don't drink. I don't smoke. All circling back to how I grew up. So that stuff I'm afraid of, the effects of my past. I don't want to know what that stuff will do to me.
Well, and that's completely understandable. But that puts you in a different position, even at 18 or whatever. It's a lot easier to help someone who's homeless, who doesn't have drugs or mental illness problems, because then you can say, here's what we can do for you. We don't have to conquer any other demons. We can give you the steps.
I also can see, while I was out there, I can also see why people pick up drinking, why people start smoking. Because when you're out there in New York, when it gets cold and when you've given up and you're sitting out there below zero weather, being sober isn't the best way to sleep. When you're drunk, you pass right out. It's really when you're out there and you're looking at other homeless people, you see why they're drunk.
So
you're sober.
You're not a drinker.
No, I'm not a drinker.
Have you said you've never done any drugs? Do you ever drink?
No, I've never drinking either.
Okay, good for you.
But you see why these homeless, being out there with them, I see they need to kind of get out of their mind. They need to kind of go to pass out. They need to the realities are just too harsh. And me being sober out there, it's all in my head. You're up 4 a.m, sitting at a park bench. Yeah, I'm awake, so you see why they do the drugs they do and they drink, because they need to escape their reality, and being there makes you really understand why they do it.
What are the sleeping arrangements when you're homeless? I'm really curious. When you're out in the streets, is it better to sleep during the daytime? Better to sleep at nighttime? Why is the park bench the go-to? And again, I don't know too much about your background, but the closest I ever got to that was I had a lease that ended on the 30th, and my next lease started on the 1st. I slept in a moving truck.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's the close. The park bench is just public space, so the only people that can kick you out is the police, and they're not going to. They're too busy. So the park is just the easiest, quickest. But anywhere else, you're in front of this place. You're in front of this place. You're too close to this place. The business owner is going to kick you out most likely. You don't have anywhere comfortable to sleep. The park is just public. No one's really going to throw you off of it.
Yeah. So when you see homeless people now, how are things where you are now, given coronavirus and the shit economy that we've all got? How are things over there?
Well, we still have a homeless problem here. Homeless nowadays have escalated. It's a lot of people take advantage of homeless now. It's kind of a business now. There's more resources more than ever. There's a lot more money and resources now more than ever. Most people can get help. The minimum, the funding has rendered the standard minimum has rise. So now I see homeless people that made a career out of it. And you learn who is doing it for a career and who is actually homeless. And it's sad to see the ones that you pass by. It'll shock you. You saw where they were going after, they leave that corner. They actually probably go to a house, and may not be the best house, but they go to a house. and they don't work. That is their job, is panhandling. And those people are abusing that entire homeless system, because now people are starting to ride past homeless people more and more and more, because people are starting to catch on that homeless people are starting to use and abuse the system.
I don't really think there's that many people that have homes. And James and I were talking about this also a little bit earlier. I don't think there's that many people that have homes that come in to, you know, treat this like a full-time or part-time job.
No, maybe not New York, but if you Michigan, yeah, it's in that in Michigan, yeah, a lot of the homeless, majority of them, no, they're really homeless, but you gotta be able to identify who's abusing and who's really homeless. But a lot of people, yeah, they're really homeless now. But
Okay. So quick question for you on this. So if you're walking down the street and a homeless guy asks you for change or money or whatever, what do you do?
It's usually not the people that walk up to you asking you for asking you for change. Those people are usually the really homeless people. The ones that are kind of not really homeless are the people you see in the same spot every time you ride past a corner. And those are usually the people who are pretty much, that's their corner. You see them at that same exact corner.
But do you give people money on the street?
Depends. It depends. If I see you at, if you walk up to me and I'm downtown somewhere, then yeah, if I can look at you and like, yeah, you're really homeless. You can look at someone's attire and tell, you can look at where they're positioned. When you've been homeless before, I've seen people taking advantage of it. And so you can kind of start to eyeball it as well.
I'm just going to say that's a skill you have that I don't.
Yeah, it's there. You see a lot of homeless people all the time. You pick up on it pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, I don't think in Charleston, South Carolina, I know there are homeless people down there, but
yeah,
we've got a pretty decent population of homeless people in the downtown area.
The more metropolitan the area, the more likely there is to be homeless people who can survive.
True.
You know,
because I ride past one every day, and oh my goodness, I see him. He has a wife that's at the next corner right after him, and they do the same things. They communicate. It's organized, and that's when you know it's not real. It's too organized, and those are the people I'm talking about when it's organized. But you wouldn't really catch that it's organized unless you're paying attention to them, you know. And that's
why the touristic areas work, though, because the tourist isn't paying attention.
Yeah. Yep.
And you know they want to buy that goodwill feeling by
yep.
You know, which is why that's, you know, that works. So crazy. So what else is going on? So you went to college.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I graduated with a degree in psychology. And yeah, so I needed a tutor for every single class. My elective classes, I needed a tutor for every single one. Graduating in high school, I needed lots of tutoring, and in college, I needed lots of tutoring.
But you put in the work.
Yeah, I definitely put in the work just so I can stay on the playing field with everyone else. I kind of needed tutoring. I was pretty much in touch with myself. I knew that high school wasn't going to be easy for me like it was for everyone else. Same with college. I knew what I was walking into as well. So I knew it was going to be a tough battle, and I knew how hard I was just going to have to fight just to be what other people consider normal.
Did you get into real estate right after college?
I got in college. I started as an RA, the RA life, and then I moved as a leasing agent, and then from a leasing agent, I kind of skyrocketed from there. From a leasing agent, I went to a leasing manager. From a leasing manager, I went to an assistant property manager. From assistant property manager, regional manager, operations specialist, all the way up to the corporate ladder, pretty much.
That's a pretty solid trajectory. You definitely latched on and you knew what you were doing. But you'd done that. That was basically your former life. You know, you looked for opportunity, you stuck with it, and you went with it. And now you got this entrepreneurial side, which is not the same as the kind of career that you're in. but you're really building this. Somebody asked if you have a YouTube. What's your YouTube?
I don't have a YouTube.
I don't have a YouTube.
No.
What
I
ventures
haven't
are you
branched.
in on the entrepreneurial side? What kind of businesses are you trying to start up?
I buy low-income houses and turn them around and rent them as low-income houses. So I'm pretty much helping the people that was pretty much me one day. So if you're low-income and Section 8 housing, or you're homeless and you get approved for Section 8, you can come rent a house from me.
Okay, so let me ask you this. You would probably be able to give me some really great perspective. Let me just restart the live over here because we just got disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
So we see in New York City, in Manhattan, which is predominantly the area that I cover, rents are pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the city and state programs don't cover a high rent. If you're
it's not happening.
the rent at one bedroom average price is around $3,000, which is prior to coronavirus.
Yeah.
You're not getting a voucher for that.
Not at all.
You're gonna be in one of the boroughs. You mean Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, something like that. But the rents have dropped quite a bit, and there are cheaper places in Manhattan. Some of the vouchers really reach. Some of them they cover a decent amount of rent, but landlords still don't want them. And
yeah, I know. I get it.
right?
Yeah,
So,
I got them, so I know why those. Especially, even though the rents may have dropped, that's still perfect. If it's still the same high class building, it's still the same middle class building. Even though the landlords were forced to drop the rent, the tenants are still going to be the same that come in there. And I get it. I know why they don't want them. The tenants are definitely they're a little harsher on the properties. For sure, because they come in with a bunch of kids there too, so you have to budget for that as well. They're going to bring some damages. Some of them, then you get lucky and have some great tenants that take care of the property, and those are the ones I get thankful for. I give them discounts just so they can stay. But then you do get some tenants that are really heavy on the property and bring some really harsh damages, and I see that often more than not. And
but
so,
it is often. It is often. And that's why so many landlords are adverse to these programs.
Yeah, they know what they know. And I'm sure the landlords, they talk to other landlords who do dabble in the Section 8 area, in the voucher area, and they can tell you the majority of their tenants are harsher on the properties, even if it's not so much. When they move out, they're not going to give you the property as you gave it to them. But I'm sure in the higher class markets, they do, because they want their security deposit back, so they're a little nicer. They give you it right back the same when you got it. On my end, no, you're not getting the house back in the same place you got it. I don't expect it back in the same place you got it. I come in with a maintenance team ready to turn it and get it ready. But when I do get it back the same way I gave you, I'm actually pretty shocked.
Yeah. I doesn't surprise.
Well, how do you budget for that? Because it just means that your general overhead cost for rentals is going to be higher.
Yeah, it depends on how many people living in there. If it's a family, 4 kids and a mother, it depends on if it's a 2-bedroom, single family home. I'll probably budget like $2,000, $3,000. And I may have gotten that in the deposit. Maybe I collect first and last months up front, a higher deposit, and save all that just to turn it when they leave. It depends. If it's just a husband and wife, maybe like $200. It could be anywhere. I might not need to do anything, slap a coat of paint on and get the next person in there. It all depends. It's the template for either or. I'm usually ready.
Let me just, Mark, do you have any more follow-up questions that you want to throw in there?
No, actually no.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, we actually just exceeded the time limit for the Instagram live, so I'm gonna kind of wind down a little. I restarted it, but I do want to wind down because at the end of the day, I do have to edit the full tape. James, any outstanding questions that you have for Derrick, or anything else?
Nothing that comes to mind right now. I would like to have Derrick on again sometime. He's got some really good input.
Yeah, I'd love to be on.
It definitely is, and And Derrick, you have to. I want to know what links you want me to throw in. I got somebody asking about your book already, so let's definitely work on pushing that. Is there anything else that you wanted to throw out there?
www.derrickkirk.com is where you'll get links to the podcast, to the Instagram, to everywhere. And just go straight to the website.
All right, cool. I appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we'll hear from you soon. So basically, just so you know how this works, we're live right now. So you got TikTok, you got Facebook, you got Instagram. That's all live. But we then take this, we post-produce it. It goes on YouTube, full video, an intro and an outro. All your information is going to be on YouTube. So anybody who's watching live right now, make sure you check out the YouTube. We'll have that up probably tomorrow afternoon. And then we also take the audio, and you're on Spotify, you're on Apple Podcast, you're on Anchor. Anywhere you can listen to a podcast, you're on there as well. So I'll make sure that we got you on all those platforms. We're still new, so if anybody's watching us right now, especially if you're on live, make sure you subscribe to YouTube.
Definitely.
You follow our podcast, and make sure you follow Derrick too. And we'll bring you back on soon. Love to follow up, see how things are, and that's all I got.
I enjoy being here.
All right, cool.
Yeah, super glad to have you. So.
All right, guys. I'll catch you later.
All right. Thank you.
All right. See you.
Thanks for joining this far. If you made it this far, you definitely owe me a like, at least a comment, and if you don't very much mind, consider sharing. I'd appreciate that very much. Thank you.